Hello and welcome back to the second part of chapter 1. And so we're going to pick it up with talking about big data. If you're going to work in data analytics, then you need to understand these four V's here. Anybody that might talk to you about your analytical skills might ask you what these things might mean. So that's one of the first things that we'll cover here. So what is big data? So it's a set of data that's too large, too complex to be handled by standard data processing techniques. So it's something that probably wouldn't work in Excel. It would take up too many rows. And if you had to hook up, as many rows in Excel to something else, another set of data, let's say you were analyzing the weather for each record that you collected. So you would need another set of data that's just as large, and it needs to be linked up and then processed. And so when we talk about big data, it's huge. It's not normally what we would typically be able to analyze using our standard spreadsheet or um, statistical processing packages. So here we have an example of how that four V's of big data might look in terms of volume. We're looking at terabytes to exabytes and even larger. I've seen that in the medical area, they collect around 22 zettabytes of information per year. In terms of velocity, how fast is that data coming? How fast do you have to respond to it? Something I saw about a year or two ago is I think GE jet engines collect around 2 terabytes of information every time they make a flight. And so if you wanted to correct something in that engine as it's going along, then you've got to process that data on board in real time and make adjustments in real time. When we talk about variety, we mean that the data might be unstructured. And so that might include text, video, and audio, all of which you've got to link together and then process that in order to find some kind of pattern there. In terms of veracity, we're talking about how um, certain are you about the data? Is there a lot of uncertainty in it? What can you do to help you with that? So these are the same things that I was talking about. I mean, volume is just huge amounts of data. Velocity is how fast is it coming in real time. And then variety is, things like text data, audio data, video data. All of it has to be linked together so that you can process that. That's where the good database skills, SQL or SQL skills come from. Here we have veracity, has to deal again with that uncertainty. And those uncertainty or inconsistencies on, the units of measure, how reliable the responses might be, is there any bias that's in that data? You have to take all of that into account. So with us collecting all this information, we eventually need to analyze it to see if there are any patterns there. And so that's where the opportunities with big data lie. And so the challenges then with having all this data is, okay, where are we going to store it? How are we going to store it? How are we going to process it? How are we going to secure it? That is, keeping it private, making sure data that belongs to people is not getting out there and they're not identified with that data. And so that also means that there's been a huge shortage in people with analytical skills and the ability to think in these terms about, okay, how am I going to analyze this? How am I going to relate all the data and find patterns and tell a story with that? And so with this big data also means that there's been different technologies that have been developed. One is called Hadoop, and Hadoop is free software, and that's what we mean by open software here, and it supports big data processing. And when we say big data processing, it means the different variety of data that might be out there. It can do text, audio, video, just however you've got it set up. It can work with different types of storage and doing different types of processing. In Hadoop is this map reduce, where it does some additional steps um, to kind of get the data into a manageable form. If you want to find out more about these different technologies, I would suggest do a little um, Google search, and you can read some more. It's probably beyond the scope of our first chapter in data analytics, or even first course in data analytics. Another big area with the big data is data security. You need to understand what it means to secure that data and how you're going to use it. I think Europe just passed some data privacy concerns just because of how people were lax with securing their data. But one of the positive things is that more companies are searching for people with data analytics skills. Here you see the book talks about data scientists. Data scientists are typically someone who's going to have a lot more statistical background when doing analysis. They also may use a variety of programming languages like R and Python. Right? Also with big data, when we're collecting this data, there's this concept called the Internet of Things. And so this is all the different types of sensors that are on all the different devices that are out there that are collecting data that's going to need to be analyzed to find those patterns and to give us some clue as to what the data means. The different types of machines, watches now collect all kinds of data, phones collect all kinds of data. You might have sensors in your house just to collect use of electricity in your house. You might have sensors on your refrigerator that detects what's going in and out of your refrigerator. And then companies will use that data to enhance their services. And they may charge for that and make additional revenue, or they may just use it to have competitive advantage. The next thing I want to talk about is business analytics and practice. And so this will give you hopefully an overview of how analytics might be used in your field, or it might help you choose a field that you might want to go into specifically with your data analytics degree. So graphically, if we look at data analytics and practice, look at the competitive advantage that you get by doing different types of analytics and how complex things are. So if you'll notice, the three types of analytics we talked about were descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive. I thought I'd mentioned that twice. So you see here under descriptive, we got just standard reporting, doing some kind of query out of a database, data visualization, descriptive statistics. Then we've got an overlap with data mining. We get into forecasting and predictive modeling for predictive analytics, and then we see that prescriptive analytics deals with a lot of simulation, rule-based models, decision analysis, and optimization. So we'll be looking at each one of these. We're probably spending most of our time in this descriptive area and getting a little into the predictive area. Sometimes predictive and prescriptive analytics is referred to as advanced analytics. So some examples of using descriptive analytics and predictive for financial analytics. So you got for forecasting financial performance, assessing the risk, construct optimal portfolios, how to allocate assets, and so on. You also might do some simulation in the financial sector, which I mentioned in the previous video. Another area that's gaining popularity is human resource analytics. And here you might use analytics to make sure you have the correct mix of skills that your organization is going to need or currently needs. Are you hiring the highest quality talent? And how are you looking at retaining that talent? And so you can analyze things that you're doing, see if it's working or not. Also looking to make sure you're meeting your diversity goals within your organization. So there's lots of things that are coming on board because of all that data is out there in those databases. Now it's time to start analyzing to help us make better decisions in the human resource area. There's also marketing analytics, which is growing very fast, especially with social media. There's all kinds of data that's being collected there, and you'll see that sentiment analysis is gaining a lot of popularity. So people who just specialize in one form of analytics are getting really good jobs for being able to do that. Some specific things that marketing analytics will help companies do is allow them to see how their advertising budgets are being used and if it's a good use of those advertising budgets. Also to do better pricing strategies, improve forecasting demand, how you look at your product line management, also increase customer satisfaction and loyalty. So all of these can be useful to an organization if you've got the data, and then you can show how that data is helping you meet these different areas. There's also healthcare analytics. And healthcare analytics uses all of the different categories that we've talked about. Patient, staff, facility scheduling, patient flow, purchasing, inventory control, all that. Again, there's all kinds of data that's out there in the healthcare area, and now they're starting to use it to make better decisions. If you're interested in going into this area, Nashville is a huge healthcare market, and so I would suggest you look for an internship down in that area in this specific type of field. Some other uses for healthcare analytics would be in diagnosis and treatment, but you'd probably need to have some more background in different types of issues there. Another area that's very popular with analytics right now is supply chain analytics. You might also hear this referred to as logistics. So some big users of that area would be UPS, FedEx, and so on. They're looking how to best deliver their goods and what's the most efficient way to do that, or the most efficient path. And so ultimately they're looking for a more efficient supply chain or more efficient logistics. Another area for analytics is in the government. So the government is going to use those analytics to drive out inefficiencies and make people more accountable. They can also be used in nonprofit agencies. We've had a couple of interns in some nonprofit agencies in Bowling Green, and so they seem to really like them, and they help identify where they're using their money most efficiently or where they should be using it. There's also sports analytics, which seems to be very, very popular. I think I heard recently that some professional sports players are also hiring their own individual analytics person to help them improve and get better, or to help them market themselves to a particular team. And so that's another huge area to go into. And related to this would be some kind of prescriptive analytics that sports organizations use to adjust ticket prices dynamically, based on the season to uh, meet the demand or based on the demand for a particular game or where they're at. So if they know the demand is going to be high or they can predict the demand is going to be high, then they're able to raise their prices in order to generate more revenue. And the last thing we can talk about is web analytics. We have a whole course on web analytics, but using analytics, you can use that to configure your website, how to position ads, how they're best used, how to attract more people and get them to buy or actually do something that you're intending them to do as they come to your site. And so that ends this first chapter.